Hey everybody, it's Hawk here, and I know this video is terribly overdue. Overtime and me being a terrible procrastinator caught up to me. On top of the fact that I started poking around, and this is a very broad, complicated subject. So I hope I don't dumb it down too much and just kind of remove a lot of cool stuff from it. So I also don't want it to go and be 45 minutes. I really hope it's not. Anyway, so as our last video, we talked about bestial dragons. Dumb ones who are big and scary and act like giant war animals. Now we're talking about common dragons. So-called. As you can see, I'm using D&D dragons, because that's generally what the, quote, common dragon looks like. Trust me, this is not the normal depiction. This just appears to be the West's general depiction of dragons for whatever reason. I'm honestly not sure, because medieval dragons didn't look like this either. They look more like giant chimeras. It's weird, okay? But the thing about common dragons is, there's not much in common with each other, other than what they look like, which is 4 legs, a pair of wings, and generally breathe fire. I have to say generally because I've got a white one sitting right here, and in D&D he breathes cold. Which is awesome, by the way. White dragons are my favorite dragon. Fight me. Fight me about it. But the thing about common dragons is outside of the basic physical similarities, and even that's not entirely true, because Skyrim and The Hobbit would point us in the other direction of them being shaped like wyverns. That's it. The intelligence goes from toddler-esque to I'm a super genius. So we're going from, pretty low IQ, I'd say, to 60 to 70, functional, understand basic concepts and things, all the way up to probably 200 plus, beyond human. And then it gets worse, because now we can start adding in, well, can they use magic? And I don't mean can they learn magic, that is entirely different, and we're not doing learn skills, because that's just insane. I'm talking about innate magic. In the book series, The Dragon Corsairs, dragons have their own form of magic. In the inheritance cycle, dragons have inborn magic that they can't actually control, but it's there. D&D, they get sorcerer levels or sorcerer casting as they level up. Or get more hit die, not level up. They're not PCs. Well, they can be, but the rules are terrible, and I'm not going to go off on a 3.5 tangent, because that I will spend hours talking about 3.5. But you get the point. In a lot of media, they have magic. In other media, they don't. In other media, they're just giant, this thing. They're Smaug. There we go. We'll go with that. They're the Smaug dragons. So the ones that are just big, scary, and breed an element, I'm not going to just say it's fire, we're going to call Smaug type. They're Smaugs. Then we're going to lump the dragons that have magical powers, but it's not automatic or not entirely controllable, the Saphira-type dragons. This just makes my life easier. And then the ones that have inborn magic and can do weird magic-y crap, I'm just going to call mage dragons. Because there's plenty of series where they have that, and I'm not going to quite single them out, because there's not, like, a good archetype in my mind. I apparently haven't consumed enough of that type of media, and I would love some book recommendations if you guys have any really good ones about that kind of stuff. And there's a mosquito trying to attack my face. So we'll do that. So we'll start with Smaug dragons. How would Smaug dragons shape war? Okay. I gotta talk about size. This is why I have good old Regdar here. Yes, I have a fighter for scale, so just so you can tell. As a person compared to this, it's ridiculous. So if they're this big, whoever has dragons wins. That's it. Okay, because this thing is so huge. What are you gonna do to it? Let's be honest. Because the Hobbit movie made Smaug so huge, they needed to use a ballista bolt to take him out. In the actual Hobbit, I don't think Smaug was quite that big. Smaug was huge, but I don't think he was... I think Smaug was more like this. Which is still really big. A human is the size of his hand. Okay, that's scale-wise here, okay? A human is this big if I was a dragon. That's nuts. That is absolutely nuts. So, a normal arrow could probably take that out if it's a particularly good arrow. It's rigid and actually punctures through a soft place, like an eyeball. you know, get a shot through the eye, go into the skull. You could kill a dragon with that. If they're this big, they're basically impervious to anything you're going to do to them, short of ballistas, or comparable big things, or guns. Guns might work. Guns might work, depending on their hide. If their hide is just normal, it'll work. If their hide is magically reinforced, as so often it is, yeah, that really is a toss-up. That entirely depends on your setting. I actually don't know. So that's part of the issue. So much of the common dragon is so much setting dependent, and that's kind of the issue talking about this. But let's just say SMAP. We'll talk about just this and try to keep setting stuff out as much as humanly possible. So we're gonna go with the red dragon from D&D, sans spellcasting capability, and it's starting to get dark. I hope I don't have to turn a light on. So sans spellcasting ability, a dragon this big wins you a war. This is a nuclear bomb. Hell, the dragon might be king or queen, depending on gender or depending on title. I mean, I'm not gonna. If a female dragon wants to be called king, I'm gonna go let her she wants. You don't question that. Let her do what she wants. If they're this, they're not an auto win. That's kind of the perk. They're not an auto win, which actually raises another point. Does both sides have dragons? If only one side has dragons, I think even a dragon of this side is going to just automatically win you a war. Okay, I went and got a lamp because it was getting dark and I didn't want to go reshoot the whole thing. So anyway, back to what I was doing. If both sides have dragons, I honestly question the point of having normal armies. If they're at least this big. If they're this big, which is about the size of the scale. Let's get rough approximation of scale here. This is about the size, body-wise, of a horse, with a wingspan of, actually, I would say roughly appropriate size. Probably might be a little bit bigger, but it's about in the ballpark. So if they're this big, you have an air force now. And now medieval tactics have to completely change because you can't walk in large groups because, well, you have air cover, you have air forces to deal with. If they're this big, and God forbid, this big, why do you have an army of spearmen and archers and pikes and cavalry? Honestly, I'm actually asking this question. Why would you? I'm looking at it and going, okay, well, I have a flying flamethrower. Let's just go with that. I have a flying flamethrower. He doesn't even use the fire, because the guy on back can just drop flechettes on you. So if you actually stand in formation, I'll just drop a bunch of metal spikes on your head and screw you. One dude and a dragon are going to cause so much more, are going to cause damage way out of proportion to themselves. Now, of course, we're going to go, but Hawk, air forces didn't completely invalidate people once they came, infantry once those came online. True they did not. However, air forces needed to land somewhere, right? Dragons don't need landing strips. They just need a field. Literally, just they need a semi-open area. I mean, half the time they don't even need that. Red dragons in D&D, for instance, live in the mountains. They don't land on flat areas. They live up in the tundra. Well, they got plenty of flat spaces. You get black dragons who live in swamps, and they can still fly. Well, they can do whatever they want, right? They don't need a landing strip. They don't really need infrastructure. They just need food. As long as they can get food, they'll go forever. So, why? And then you get castles. Now, you can have castles be impervious to dragon attack. Or I shouldn't say impervious, but you can make a dragon-resistant castle. Okay, as long as the fire doesn't literally melt stone, and if it does, you're screwed. But you can probably magic that up anyway. So we'll just say castles can be made dragon-resistant. Why do I need 30, 40 dudes garrisoning a castle? You have a dragon, or two, garrison the castle, because they can have a handful of just people who are trained to use scorpions. We'll go with that, because that's probably the better usage other than a ballista. It's too big. A scorpion's nice, though. Nice big bolt. It's nice and fixed, so you can shoot upwards. You don't need fancy professional soldiers for that. A scorpion's pretty easy to operate. It's just a couple of cranks on the side, and you stick it in there, and you shoot. It's simple. That was kind of a big perk. If you get really good at it, you can be really accurate. But you're not going to have these big armies anymore, because why? You're just a giant target. I mean, you're going to have, like, city guards and stuff. That would probably make some level of sense. The militia, clearly. But At the same time, you're never going to fight a dragon on the ground. So either everyone's going to become a ranged trooper with probably a backup weapon like an axe or something, or you're just going to eliminate them together and focus on getting more dragons. Now, of course, this assumes dragons are common. Or, I shouldn't say common, not rare as hell. We're talking like inheritance cycle peak dragon riders. You know, they're reasonably common. Now, that they kind of just took them out of the whole political situation, which is a great plan, by the way. But in other settings, that doesn't happen. So what we get... Now what happens is if dragons are rare, like the actual inheritance cycle, where we watch Aragon go off and do his thing, well, that changes. Who has the dragon? Now, in the actual story, Galbatorix is the one who has the dragon, so that seems fairly straight up to me. He's the one with the dragon, he is the one who has power, he is the one who gets to do whatever he wants. I see that happening. Whichever faction has the access to the dragon, probably the most or better dragons, they're just in charge. What are you going to do? You can't really argue with them. Now, in that instance, it turns into how much territory can the one dragon cover. That's what you start getting into, how much space can a singular dragon cover. That's what would start dictating the size of kingdoms. Whoever has the dragon owns X amount of turf, because it's the amount of turf they and the dragon can cover. Or the dragons just go, screw this, what do we need an intermediary for? We'll just do it ourselves. And then you get dragon kingdoms. Notice, this is all without dragons having anything else. This is just a dragon being a giant animal, or giant intelligent being, with all of the natural stuff that would go into having this size and flight capabilities, and then a breath weapon. That's it! They don't need magic! Everything gets worse when you add magic. Whether controllable or not, it just exacerbates the whole thing. So once you add magic into them, conscious or not, the not doesn't really change anything. If it's suddenly conscious, well now I'm wondering why the dragons aren't in charge. Usually this is hand-waved way of they just don't care enough. Okay, that's fair. Why would they care, right? It's like, well, I can control, this entire kingdom. Well, I don't really give enough of a crap to, so, But at the same time, why wouldn't they? I think it would be far more common where you get dragons going, I'm going to rule this kingdom, and then they go, no, you're not, and then they burn the entire army and go, who's in charge again? You are, my lord. Because they can. What are you going to stop them with? Seriously, what is an army of pikemen going to do against icing death here? Squat. Absolute squat. Because he's never going to let you hit him. He's going to stay up. He's going to freeze you. If this is D&D, he can then burrow under you and burst out and then take off again. He can do all sorts of crazy stuff. This is why white dragons are the best. Again, fight me on it. It's... dragons in the common tense, as in them being intelligent, would change everything. Because they don't even need a rider. Riders are completely optional. And really, it's less of a rider and they more have a tail gunner. Because I haven't really talked about that. We have a dragon like this. I believe this is supposed to represent a Chardalon. Big, scary dragon. He doesn't need a person on his back. I mean, he can fit like 8 or 9 people back there, but does he need them? No. Doesn't need anyone on his back. He's fine. Especially if he has magic. Especially if he has magic. He doesn't need crap. He can just sit up there and cast spells all frickin' day down on your head. Because he can do whatever he wants. But I think they'd go with people on their back. Now, they'd make it very clear that they're the pilot, and you're their co-pilot, or their tail gunner, or the bombardier. You're part of the crew. They are not your vehicle. They are the driver and the vehicle. And they would be treated as such. Because dragons are intelligent, so every time I've seen this, when a dragon's intelligent, they're generally treated like that, because they kind of demand that they get treated that way, which makes perfect sense to me. I'm not going to argue with a, 2-story tall creature that can deep fry myself. No. Not going to argue with that. So you get dragon riders, or dragon co-pilots, but probably be dragon riders, because that's what they're doing. They're riding on the back of a dragon. And they'd be armed with crossbows, or longbows. If they can shoot longbows, they can just stand on its back. And then it'd be for shooting other riders. Not for shooting down, because who gives a crap about that? You'd have a bombardier for that. Big sack full of flechettes and dump them off the side, or rocks, or... You could just use rocks, honestly. Weighted spikes. Kind of use whatever you feel like. I honestly imagine that if dragons of this size-ish are common, or common enough, you would pretty much see the end of conventional medieval armies. Outside of several very specific instances. Possibly, holding a city or something, because I don't think dragons would be particularly good at holding cities, because you don't want to burn the whole place to the ground, so you can't quite be as, crazy with the whole fire thing. That doesn't mean they can't just burn the gates to the ground and let a normal army in. It's just, I don't see a normal, large-scale professional army being something that'd be particularly common. If I need to go take a city, I'm just going to go get the militia, and then my dragon knights. Which the dragons are knights, and the people riding them are knights, because dragons probably want to have a knighthood too. So, you just have them, they'd fly on over, they'd drop stuff on people, they'd burn the gatehouse, wrench the gates off its hinges, and then my militia comes barreling through and, being assisted by my dragon knights, would then take the city. That's really the only way I see a conventional army being used. It would be radically different. It would look very strange. Honestly. And, again, if this seems overly vague, like insanely vague, it's because so much about a dragon of this type is setting dependent. Their size, their strength, whether they even have a breath weapon or not, whether they have access to magic, all of that, their intelligence, it all drastically changes what happens. Because if you get the super intelligent dragons, they're probably just going to tell us to screw off because they don't give a crap. But you get the ones that are about human intelligence, well, now we can negotiate them. They just have an alien perspective on the world. Even if that's true. And that's not universally true either. They just think a little differently, maybe. Not super alien, just like a different culture. And then you get these guys who would just be probably ruling the world, if we're being honest. That's it for me this evening, because it's getting really dark and I'm getting eaten by mosquitoes. Yeah, so if you liked the video, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment for me, tell me how I can do better, or throw video suggestions at me. I like video suggestions. I'll be getting back to you guys with the God Dragon video, which is probably going to be a bit on the short side, because it's God Dragon. What is there really to say? But I'll see you all later. Peace out.